In this video, I am fully explaining how I grew my back from this to that in less than a year. Now, with back training, there's really only two types of movements that you have to care about, or that you can really do. These are your vertical rows and your horizontal rows. Now, what this means is things like lat pull downs, pull-ups. You'll notice it is practically the same movement. The only difference is with lat pull downs, you're doing with a machine. Pull-ups, you're using your own body weight. You're doing the same, you're pulling weight in each case, but it's different forms. And if you look at these diagrams, you can see specifically, it is almost the exact same muscles being, it is in fact the same, exact same muscles being hit during these exercises. So, the other type, horizontal rows. These are traditional rows. Whatever row you think of, this is what it's going to be. So these are T-bars, chest-supported rows, cable rows, barbell rows. These are just a couple examples. There's way more. Dumbbell rows, there's much more examples, but all that matters is you find one which you enjoy, hits the muscles adequately, and is progressible. That's all that really matters when it comes to exercise selection. And again, you can see specifically, these movements hit both the lats, but also more of the interior muscles. So let's take a look here. You can see with the pulling movements, there's some other back muscle engagement, but it's almost entirely the lats. Pulling movements are very lat biased, but row movements, you can see there is lat engagement, but it's also very significantly the center back, the center. So that brings me to my next point, which is understanding the biomechanics of the back muscles. The main function of your back is to pull in general. That's how all back training works. That's why it's called a pull day when you train back. So as you can see here, you can imagine that pulling movements are mostly emphasizing your lats on the sides here, and row movements are hitting more the center, the trapezius, the center upper back, you see here. And for like erectors, it's less directly trained. It's almost entirely not trained, in fact. To be honest, it should be trained more. But when you're just dealing with the average person, these two things are all you really need. So it's relatively irrelevant. Like, no one's going to be flexing their crazy erectors. So vertical movements, lats, horizontal movements, more the center. But why we care about this, really, this means that in general, pulling movements have to do with the width of your back, how wide your back is, and horizontal movements have to do with how thick your back is. Get it? So you really have to ask yourself, like, what do I care about? Because when it comes to aesthetics, width is everything really for the back. Thickness is always important. But when we're talking about things like the V-taper, all you really care about is the pulling movements. That's what's building that. So a lot of the time, I would recommend emphasizing your pulling movements more. Like training them first, for example. That's what I personally do. because that to me is more important. So that's just something you can kind of ask yourself, like, what are your priorities? That's what all bodybuilding really is. Because there's a lot of specific things you can do, but you gotta specialize it for yourself. Is the thing. You can't follow a blueprint because everybody has different goals and everybody has a different body, so it's never going to work the same way. So now we understand the incredibly basic biomechanics of the back. How do we actually do this in order to get a big back? Now, depends on the split you're currently running. But regardless of your split, the main thing you want to focus on, 1 to 2 sessions a week, including one of these movements and one of these movements. It doesn't have to be one of these specifically or one of these specifically, but some kind of vertical row, some kind of horizontal row. That's all that matters. Really, you just need one exercise, one type of these even. You don't even need a second pull or a second row. Choose one you really like for each of them. If you're training intensely, close to failure or failure, 2 sets will be amazing. If you're more of a beginner, or you just train less intensely, it would be beneficial to do 3 or 4 sets. An important thing, choose movements you actually enjoy. There's a lot of stuff, especially for back training for some reason, that retorts itself as science-based, but in reality, most of these influencers promoting these movements built their back on pull-ups and rows, like the basics, you know? That's what really built their physiques, even though nowadays they're promoting this so they can sell you whatever they want, really. So do what you like. And I would recommend personally pull-ups for your vertical movements, as these are a bit harder and you're building your entire system. Well, like, you're also very much engaging your biceps and forearms. I feel like more than with lat pull downs. So it's kind of a more compound movement. So sample back day. You walk in the gym, 2 sets of pull-ups to failure. Next, 2 sets of chest supported rows to failure. You have done all the back work you need, at least until your next back day. You've got it covered. As long as you're training intense enough, you're good. You do not need to overcomplicate this. This is very simple in reality, but for some reason we're overcomplicating it. You can very much build an aesthetic big physique with the basics. Once you get more into the intermediate and advanced stages, that's where things like kelso shrugs and the specialized movements will really help. But if you're just starting off, or if you've just been in the gym for, let's say, half a year to a year, or even a bit more, year, 2 years, this will be completely fine. You'll still have the momentum, and you will progress relatively easily with these. Now, when we're talking aesthetically, like I mentioned before, lat development would be generally the goal. So that means when you think about it, in terms of aesthetics, the most important things will always be your outline muscles. So that means, as I've mentioned before in previous video, your shoulder and your back, mostly shoulders and back. This is what makes your frame. This is what makes or breaks your physique, you could say, even. So you do want to emphasize lat development very much. Really train it hard. Even depending on how much you care about it, train it first, potentially. If you want it more balanced, you don't necessarily care. You just want a big back in general. You can, and very common thing is alternating. So one day you start with pull-ups, next day chest whatever rows. So one day start with pull-ups, then rows. Next time rows, pull-ups, so that it's balanced. Because whatever exercising you're doing next will always be hindered to an extent. That's not your maximum performance. So that is something you want to consider. So it just depends on what you want. You can do it either way, really. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like you won't make gains like this. You most certainly still will make significant gains on your thickness as well. It's not to say that you won't at all. It's just depends on what you want. But aesthetically, lats are almost always more important. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See you guys.